Welcome back to the Reseller Journey podcast. And in this episode, we got my brother Mark with Not Your Dad CPA. Maybe you've seen his videos, or maybe you're trying to learn a little bit more about taking advantage of some tax deductions as a reseller. We are going to get it all laid out for you in a beautiful way so it's easy to understand, so you can start seeing a good return this year in 2025. Appreciate you coming on, Mark. I think you're one of the best that breaks it down in an easy to learn way when it comes to doing taxes, not only for small businesses, but specifically resellers, because you're in that resale world. So I appreciate you coming on. It is the Reseller Journey podcast. I actually want to know, for people that don't really know, kind of where you're at in your business and what you do. Can you just give us like a quick version of like maybe how you got into reselling, and then, how you kind of applied your knowledge with taxes, and kind of just your background and your backstory?
Yep. So, yeah, thanks for having me. So I did accounting in college. I went to work for an accounting firm, went to work for another company just in corporate finance, doing the corporate thing. But I was a CPA, and I was like, I never wanted to do taxes on the side, but I was like, I am a CPA, so why don't I just give it a try? So like 2015-ish, I started doing taxes for pay. I mean, I'd done it for friends and stuff before that, but I started doing it for a handful of people, and it started doubling every year. But pretty quickly, I got a couple of resellers, and I got involved in like the blogging, personal finance blogging space around 2015. So I got to know people in that area, and people I met through that crowd, they said, "Hey, we have a podcast with about 10,000 listeners of people who sell on eBay."
Nice.
And that was the first I had heard about eBay in like years. Like I knew about eBay in 2000 or whenever it pretty much came on the scene, but I was like,
Yeah.
oh, people still sell on eBay. Um, so I went on there, and that's when I got my my first exposure to a lot of the common questions that resellers have been asking for years. Like, how do I treat my inventory? When can I deduct it? Do I have to keep receipts? Like, do I have to pay taxes? Like, all the questions. So that's when I started researching all those just for this podcast that I was on a couple times, and just started getting more reseller clients from there. And after a while, I was like, I think I'm just gonna focus on this audience, on this niche. And it was about that same time when I started selling on Amazon myself, uh, kind of independent of all that other stuff, just because I had friends that I heard were starting to make money selling online. I was like, this seems like it could be a cool thing. Plus, I'm starting to help these people with taxes. So, yeah, I sold on Amazon from like 2016 just up until last year, basically. So I'm familiar with a lot of the issues that resellers deal with, both from doing hundreds of their tax returns every year and also from selling on my own. So that's kind of my journey in a nutshell.
Are you a reseller looking to make an extra bit of money? Well, we are hiring to our wholesale team of over 31 people, where we buy inventory from nationwide. So if you love to source, but you don't want any of that drama like the listing and the photography, and you want to be able to multiply money fast, well then click the link down below, because we are expanding our team. It is a great option to be able to double your money, especially if you source at flea markets, the Goodwill bins, estate sales, yard sales, rag houses. We are buying thousands of pieces of clothing every week. If this sounds like something you might be interested in, book a call down below. We'll get you onboarded. We'll get you set up with our brand list of over 300 brands, and we'd love to put some money in your pocket. Check it out. And now you're just doing eBay, or?
Well, now I just focus on the accounting and tax side of things. Like I don't resell myself anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, all my clients are, no, I'd say 80% of my clients are doing some form of reselling, whether that's eBay, Amazon, Poshmark, local brick and mortar type stuff, drop shipping.
Yeah. Yep. When I first started getting into this, I was like, you know what, I'm going to save the money and not hire a CPA, I know I can do it. And then come to find out, I thought that I was, getting good deductions, but maybe not aware of some of the ones I might be missing out on. And by paying, whatever, 250, 500 extra to have someone do it, not only it takes the pressure off from you, making mistakes, but you're going to see such a bigger like return because you're hiring a professional that knows all the tax codes and the new changes. So I encourage people that, if you're just getting started, try not to do it by yourself. Hire someone, because that 250 to 500 you make by hiring someone or whatever it costs, you're going to see a return on that investment come back in just by like hiring someone like yourself, or there's other, people that, are in the reselling niche that do it. Like what is like maybe a common mistake resellers make, when it comes to like taking advantage of a deduction? Like what's a common one they miss out on, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, well, first I want to echo what you just said as far as like paying for a professional to handle that stuff for you. I mean, I used to be the exact same way, just starting out blogging and stuff. Like I was trying to figure out how to put together my website. And there's tons of services you can buy, obviously, but all these plugins and stuff. And I'm like, I'm not going to pay $10 for that. I'm just going to figure it out myself. And looking back, I did learn a lot. There was an upside, but now just knowing the value of paying people to set up my Facebook ads or to do stuff on my website or to whatever, do my social media, I'm like, uh, it gives me so much pleasure just to pay someone else to do that for me, because I have zero desire to do that stuff.
Right.
And I know that's how a lot of people feel about taxes. There's nothing wrong with doing it yourself if you really want to learn it. You might be leaving money on the table. Uh, but yeah, like your question, there's a lot of deductions that people aren't aware of. There's a lot of mistakes they make getting started with the business that they might not otherwise make had they consulted with a professional. Um, but I mean, just there's a lot of basic ones that people might miss, like just mileage, business mileage for 2025. I haven't double checked it, but I think it's 70 cents per business mile
Mm,
that you can deduct. But you can either deduct mileage or you can take the business portion of actual expenses. It's either or. Some
right.
people don't know that. And, you can do, if you're starting out, you can do whichever one you think is going to be more beneficial for you long term.
Hmm.
You can deduct the business portion of your cell phone or your internet, which is something people don't realize.
Yep.
A lot of people are scared to take the home office deduction, or they're not even aware of it because they heard that it's an audit flag. But I mean, but that's not necessarily the case. So there's a lot of different things.
And I think when resellers just start out, that's the big one, is the home office deduction. Like I work from home and I didn't realize that till 2 years ago. And I'm like, wow, we're paying $2,800, $2,900 a month. And it's like, but I work from home. So a portion of that can be taken off as a home office, like my warehouse.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of clients, they use their whole basement or like a whole floor of their home for their
Right.
business because they use it for photos and their warehouse and their inventory storage. And that's basically, you can take that portion, that percentage of the total square footage of your home. So if
Mhm.
that's 50%, you can basically take a 50% deduction for your rent or mortgage interest, property taxes, utilities. You can get some depreciation, and that can really add up. That can be a significant deduction that reduces your business taxable income.
It was. So you're not just saying the home itself, but also like half of the electric bill.
Yep, the utilities is one of those that you can factor in there for sure.
Okay. All right. Good to know. Good to know. Okay. Well, that's beautiful. And I love seeing your business grow. It's such it's a thing, people get scared in the reselling niche, they, should I keep track of receipts and all this stuff? Like it can be scary because, you don't want to get audited. You want to be able to have some things, documentation. What do you think that resellers should be keeping, like either on file or on track, in case they do ever come up with something like, it's pretty rare to get an audit, but at the same time, we do want to be prepared. What is some documentation that people need to be, like a spreadsheet, or what do we need to be doing to make sure that if that happens, we got proof?
Yeah, ideally you'll have some type of record and some type of substantiation or documentation that supports that record. So what I mean by that is, your bookkeeping system, if whether that's a spreadsheet or a pencil and paper or something more robust like QuickBooks Online, that's your record. That's where all the transactions flow into. That's the digital record. So if you see that you have a supplies expense for $100, where's the proof? Where's the substantiation? Did you get a receipt for that? Did you get a confirmation email? Did the vendor provide you something that is proof of that? So that's in a perfect world, but most people and most resellers, they don't have receipts. They don't have that supporting documentation for all those items that they purchased at a flea market or at a garage sale. So the next question is often like, well, what if I don't get a receipt? I mean, the IRS knows that. They know that a lot of people are flipping stuff. They're buying stuff at garage sales. They don't get receipts. So in that case, you just do the best you can do, which is basically just creating your own record. Whether that's on a spreadsheet, you just do the high level facts. What was
Mhm.
the date? What's the item? How much did it cost? And
Yep.
that's pretty much what you need to cover yourself. And to be honest, they don't really care about all that stuff that's probably really insignificant as far as how much it cost you. I mean, this because we're trying to purchase stuff for as low cost as possible. They don't care about those $5 items you bought at a garage sale. So don't sweat it. Like, don't go back to the prior year and try and recreate those thousands of items that you purchased.
Mm,
Just worry about it going forward, and you'll be fine.
okay. Yeah. So that gets into a question later on, but since we're already on that topic, like separating personal from business as far as like banking, do you think that's something people should do like right away? I know I waited about a year before I did that because it's not only so confusing, especially if you're doing your own taxes, it's going to take you felt like years to figure out what was personal and what was business. Do you think people should just start that as soon as possible? Start separating eBay income from personal expenses?
I think so, just because it makes it easier for you. I mean, you're not required to. The IRS doesn't necessarily care if you do that or not,
Mm,
as long as you're reporting your numbers accurately on your tax return. And that's just because most people, when they start out, they are sole proprietorships by default. That's your business classification. There's nothing you need to do to necessarily set that up. That's just what the IRS considers you to be. And you don't necessarily have to have a separate bank account for that for like legally, but for your own sanity, just helping you track your business activity, your income and your expenses, it's going to make it a lot easier to have that all separated out from your personal in the beginning. Now, if you ever change your entity type, if you ever form an LLC or something else, at that point, it does become more important to get an official business account for liability reasons.
yeah.
But I mean, most resellers, especially starting out, they're sole proprietorships, and it's just a good practice. It'll make it easier on you later on, and it's not even that hard. I mean, it's as simple as opening a bank account and just making sure your eBay account or whatever platform you sell on is connected to that bank account. So your payouts go there. You can get credit cards connected to that account. So just all the business transactions are flowing through that account. So that's a pretty foundational step you can take where you can get a lot of bang for your buck. Like, if you can do only one thing, I'd probably start there.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and it took me years to do that. I mean, it just takes time, but it is make it easier. You want to make it as easy as possible as a business owner. What is like the most common tax mistakes resellers make, and how can they avoid those pitfalls? What do you see? I'm sure you see it, but what is like a common one where it's like, if you had done that, you'd been saving this much on your return.
Yeah, I think it's just not keeping good track of your numbers. I mean, it ties into not having a separate bank account, just because that makes it more difficult to throw your numbers together. And a lot of people are in that boat. So don't feel like you're alone. I get a lot of people coming to me and they're like, "Oh, I'm probably the one of the worst ones you've seen, huh?" And I'm like, "No, you're pretty much the same as everybody else."
Yep.
So don't feel bad. Like you're not the worst one out there.
Mhm.
Not you,
Okay.
but anybody
Yeah.
listening to this. So
Right.
yeah, just have some type of bookkeeping system, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be a software, but there's a whole range of options. Again, anything from a logbook, pen and paper, to a spreadsheet, to there's a lot of different types of simple bookkeeping programs, and up to more robust ones, which are probably overkill for a lot of people. So just having some method that works for you of tracking your numbers, because if you don't have accurate numbers, you're either going to overstate your income and pay more tax than you really have to, which nobody wants to pay extra, or you're going to understate your income, pay less tax than you have to, and then potentially be in the IRS crosshairs, and nobody wants that. So you just got to figure out a way to track those numbers, whether that's you or you hire somebody, or there's so many different ways people can do it these days.
Mhm. No, I love that. We can get into some more programs and how they can be helpful to kind of buy back your time when it comes to tracking your numbers. But I get this question even a lot, and I don't even I'm a reseller. I'm not no CPA, but people ask a common thing is like, when do I decide to go from sole proprietor to LLC or an S corp? When should I? Should I even? What is going to be that time when you're going to make that change to like getting an LLC or an S corp?
Yeah, typically the next step people take after a sole proprietorship would be an LLC. And there are 3 or 4 main reasons that I talk about why people should at least think about it. Um, but I mean, the main reason LLCs exist is for that limited liability. They get protection. Basically, you protect your personal assets from anybody if they ever come after the business.
Yeah.
It creates that legal separation. So if you operate in a risky industry, or if you have a lot of personal assets you want to protect, then an LLC can be a really good idea, an additional layer of protection between your business and you. And then I talked to somebody just today who said that there's certain vendors who won't yet work with them because they're not an LLC.
Yeah.
So sometimes it can open up additional opportunities for you to work with vendors or manufacturers, even some banks, just having that LLC status. And some people want it just because it raises that overall perception of their legitimacy.
Yep.
I talked to somebody, they're like, I want to do it just because it gave me more motivation, because it made me feel more official, you know?
Mhm.
And then the last reason I talk about is it's a stepping stone to an S corp if you do want to eventually layer on that S corp status, because you can't skip straight to an S corp. And the reason you would want to be an S corp is because it can potentially give you some pretty significant tax savings, which an LLC does not do by itself.
What's a common one from going from a LLC to S corp? That would be the major tax saving advantage.
Yeah, so both a sole proprietorship and an LLC on their own, they're both subject to not only income tax, which we're all familiar with, but they're also subject to self-employment tax. So that's basically an extra 15% of
Mm.
tax on your profits. So with an S corp, the profits are not subject to self-employment tax.
Mm.
So if your profit is $100,000, you can basically that's $15,000 you can save um, this year and every year going forward, and more as your profit increases. So
Mhm.
it can be when you get up into the $40,000 of annual profit or so, then you should at least be thinking about or investigating potentially layering on that S corp piece.
That's a huge savings, and I wanna get into some of these before I forget. They're kinda off. They weren't originally written down, but one thing that I learned was that, a lot of resellers do this as a family, and it's involved a lot of times with the family. So there's some deduction where you can pay either family members or your own kids a certain amount that's not taxable. How does that work? And why would someone want to do that?
Yeah, so the IRS, it's just an IRS rule. They say if you employ your kids under 18, I believe, those wages are not subject to payroll taxes. So if you hire your own kids as W-2 employees, their wages are not subject to Social Security or Medicare.
Mm.
So they're not having to have that taken out of their wages. And then if you pay them less than the standard deduction, which I think is like $30,000 for 2025. Is that right? I'm just checking real quick. Standard deduction for 2025 looks like $30,000. And the single standard deduction is $15,000. So if you pay your kids less than $15,000, then the standard deduction is just going to wipe all that out anyway, and they won't have to owe any income tax either. So, I mean, that's like a popular piece of advice that people see floating around TikTok and stuff. Oh, if you pay your kids less than 15,000, they don't have to pay any taxes. So that's why, basically.
Wait a minute, are you tracking your numbers? If you're not tracking your numbers, how do you know you're actually profitable in your business? Too many times I see a lot of beginner resellers not tracking their numbers, and they think they're profitable on items that they sell, but in actuality, they are losing thousands of dollars, which is why I'm offering a link down below, a free reseller spreadsheet to help you start to build a good foundation for your resale business. I'll go over it real quick. You can download it below, really simple to use, but it's going to help you go further faster in your resale business. A thing that often is said in business is what can be tracked can be measured, and what can be measured can be improved upon, which is why this spreadsheet is going to help you, especially if you're just starting out. Follow the instructions. You have an inventory SKU spreadsheet. You got month by month, line by line accounting, and at the end of the day, you could track your year-to-date sales. I did this because I just see so many people thinking that they're profitable in their business when they're actually not. So now back to the episode.
Wow. So that's a common one that I do hear about, but I was always wondering how it worked. Very interesting. I mean, our kids they're 8, our oldest kids, so it's not right. But for people who have kids that are starting to want to know about the family business, it's a beautiful thing and a great way to teach kids how business works while also paying them, but also taking advantage of some of those tax benefits. Another one too, which is kind of unrelated to reselling, but this one's kind of crazy. Buying a home, if you buy a home, you can write off 7 years of tax depreciation on that home every year. I mean, not every year. If you buy a home every year, is that right? That could be a massive savings. What do you know about that?
If you, let me think about that. If you purchase the home, you can deduct a portion of it through depreciation as part of the
Right.
home office deduction. I think that might be what you're talking about. So yeah, that can help. I mean, you have to depreciate the home over 27 and a half years.
Mm,
Nope, sorry. The business portion, you have to depreciate over 39 years.
okay.
So you get a little piece of depreciation over time.
That's crazy. Yeah, when I learned that, I was like, huh. Because there's people that are like the flippers out there. They like to flip houses, and they're just like, yeah, we buy a house every year because we're able to write off the depreciation on the home. And it ends up being a good savings. I
Well,
almost think, would that be, oh, go ahead.
Well, if they're buying rental properties, and in that case, they depreciate them over 27 and a half years. And yeah, that depreciation portion is pretty beneficial in the short term, for
Yeah.
sure.
I almost think, would that be considered a tax loophole? Or I don't know. I just feel like that would be a lot of good savings.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a benefit. Yeah, because you get to deduct that against your your taxable income, and yet it's a non-cash expense, so you get to keep that cash in your pocket. When you sell the property, you have to add some of that depreciation back,
Mm.
but it's still more valuable to deduct depreciation in the current year, even if you have to add it back later.
Because money is worth less over time.
Exactly.
Um, yeah. And maybe we can get into that in a little bit later, like 401k stuff. But well, that's good. That's good. I'm learning a lot, guys. I'm learning a lot. We're just trying to set you up for when you file this year. We want you to make the money. We want you to be prepared if anything were to happen. So let's see. Could you explain a little bit more the concept of like cost of goods sold, specifically for resellers, and what expenses many people forget to include?
Cost of goods sold is basically just the deduction that you get for inventory.
Mm.
So historically, the requirement was to deduct your inventory when it sold. So you go out and you buy $1,000 worth of inventory. You don't take the deduction now. You have to wait until you sell all that stuff, and then you can deduct those items as they sell. So that's what I call the accrual method for inventory. And
Yeah.
that was one of the hot questions back when I started, was like, can I deduct it now or do I have to wait? And a few years ago, with some new tax legislation, that kind of loosened up the requirements. So now you do have the option to use what I call the cash method for
Yeah.
inventory, which is basically just deducting it right away when you purchase it. So if you're someone who values simplicity and you don't want to like track all that inventory to add up the cost of goods sold of when it deducts, or when it's to deduct it when it's sold, you can use that cash method and just deduct everything right away. And I have a lot of clients who do that. I mean, it's probably a pretty even split, but
Mm.
yeah, you definitely don't want to forego deducting your inventory, whether it's now or later. It's all going to even out over time.
Right.
But yeah, that's a reseller's most significant deduction usually.
Exactly. Yeah. Your inventory costs. So yeah, I've been doing cash for when I first started because it was easier. It was just versus waiting for something to sell and then having to remember, but yeah, I mean, everyone's their own different, way they try to save time. So another one that I learned was for vehicles. We're all driving to thrift stores, we're all driving around. I don't know how true this is, but if you put like a business sticker on your vehicle, can you write off like you get flat tires or something happens, like your motor blows up, whatever, the cost of the upkeep of the vehicle? Would you be able to technically write off some of those expenses?
Just slapping a sticker on the car, unfortunately, will probably not fly with the IRS. They look at what's actually going on behind the scenes. Like,
Mm,
usually when they look at vehicles, they look at the mileage.
mm,
On their forms, they make you fill out how many business miles did you drive versus the total miles. And if you say, well, I drove 3,000 business miles and 6,000 total miles. So they'd say, okay, 50% was business, and you can take 50% of your gas, of your maintenance, of your insurance.
mm.
Um, so you can do that, or you can just deduct, um, just take the mileage rate and multiply that by your business miles.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I always wondered that because we drive a lot. We drive less now, but I was always wondering. It has to be more than just a sticker, I think. Well, very good. Well, can you, getting into more like things that just make it a little bit easier for small business owners and resellers. Can you point to any maybe specific spreadsheet or app, or like you mentioned, QuickBooks? What do you think is some of the easiest software to use to start integrating into our workflow to just keep better numbers? Is there anything you use personally?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I personally use QuickBooks Online for my own personal bookkeeping. That's what I use for the bookkeeping of the handful of bookkeeping clients who I have. But depending on where you're at, that might be overkill. It just depends on how big you are, what you're looking to automate. how comfortable you are with spreadsheets. Some people are fine with a spreadsheet. Other people hate spreadsheets. There are a handful of bookkeeping programs out there that have been created by resellers, specifically for resellers. They're typically simple, and they integrate with eBay and maybe Poshmark and Amazon. So like My Reseller Genie is one, Seller Ledger is another one, Flipwise is another one. There's a handful. So I recommend just trying a few things based on what platforms you sell on and just seeing what you like. Deciding which inventory method is for you, whether you want to use that cash method and go for simplicity, or whether you want to use the accrual method, which if you're keeping books, it can do a better job of matching the inventory deduction to the sales that it belongs to. So there's a lot of things that just have to do with your personal preference.
Yeah. Just make it easier. And then with the advancement of AI integrations and how that's all working, are you using, I mean, you're doing a lot of business as far as like on the CPA side. Are you integrating anything that helps that workflow a little better? I know you have a team. So like, what does that look like? What does your workflow look like? How are you able to scale? Because I know you're not doing 100 taxes for people by yourself. I mean, maybe you are, but
Oh yeah, I would do 100 by myself for sure. I
okay.
started getting help after I was doing like 200, I think.
Okay.
But no, I have a small team. I think the biggest help that I have, like I have a project management software that I use to help me through the tax season process,
Mm.
to help people through the various stages. So when I complete, just something that helps me send multiple emails at once when I move a handful of clients from one stage to the next, just things like that. Using e-signatures, so I'm not having to like, just wherever I can eliminate manual steps.
Yeah.
It's just a software that helps me do that. But that's for me as a CPA. That's not necessarily what a reseller would use for their job.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I use AI where I can. Typically, not as much with tax stuff, because I'll ask it questions sometimes, and this is probably good for people in the audience to know, just that you can ask ChatGPT some tax questions. It'll usually get the basics right, but when you start diving in deep, it gets a lot of stuff wrong.
Can
And
get
I'll be like, "Are you
confused.
sure about that?" It'll be like, "Oh no,
Hmm.
I'm sorry, actually," and it'll just start saying
Hmm.
whatever, and you're like, "Okay."
Yeah. I've many times I use Claude or ChatGPT, but then it's like the numbers are wrong, and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry." It's like, well, that's a big mistake. So, uh, yeah. Even though some of them are free, is there what are you using as far as like what is the name of the this software you use to like send the emails and stuff?
Yeah, so for my firm, it's called TaxDome.
Hmm.
It's one
Yeah.
that's I've been using it for a few years now, and it's grown quite a bit. It's become pretty popular in the tax preparation crowd.
It's like a CRM, and you can manage all your
Yep.
clients and
Yep.
your emails. Okay, cool. Yeah, I was wondering, everyone, there's so many out there. Um, okay, very cool, very cool. So you already walked us through the sole proprietorship, LLC. Do you think most people would just stay a sole proprietor? Like if they're just doing it maybe on part time and they're like, hey, I do, 50K a year in sales. Do you think they don't need to worry about LLC or anything like that? For most, the common reseller.
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely optional. It's not necessarily urgent for most in that situation to go out and do an LLC. Mm, unless for any of those reasons we talked about, they just want to
Yeah.
motivate themselves or open up their access to certain vendors and stuff. But yeah, I've looked at the official government statistics. I think over 70-ish% of the small businesses in the United States are sole proprietorships.
Wow.
So don't feel like you're falling behind, or
Mhm.
not doing it correctly if you are a sole proprietorship.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any new tax laws or benefits that maybe resellers or small business owners should be aware of? Because that does change. It does change a good bit. Is there anything that's you've been aware of that's like, wow, that's great, or maybe that's bad?
Yeah, I mean they're always tweaking like the tax brackets and some of the credit amounts, but as far as like new significant credits and stuff that apply, that are really gonna change things a lot, probably not. At least not as much as in prior years.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's just pretty much the basics and making sure you're aware of what those basics are. I mean,
Yeah.
that's one of my main messages is just make sure that you are exposed to some kind of baseline or acquire a baseline education when it comes to taxes. You don't have to be an expert, but just learning that little bit is going to help you significantly reduce the anxiety that a lot of small business owners and resellers feel,
Hmm.
which is a huge deal because when you remove that anxiety, which I know that a lot of people have because I've talked to tons of them, um, it allows space for peace of mind, to come in and rest upon your soul, and then you can focus on all those business those aspects of your business that you actually enjoy and that are going to move you forward.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And this is a common one that I see that people are still like really not aware of, since most resellers do a lot of traveling. Say you want to, you're not like planning a vacation, but at the same time, how can you take advantage of maybe some benefits as far as like working, thrifting, going somewhere, and can you write off that expense if you stay at a hotel and you're sourcing at the Goodwill outlet or something like that? What does that look like? Is that even possible? Can you mix it in while still having a little enjoyment, I guess, in that?
Yeah, you can definitely take advantage of travel deductions. So it's just going to depend on what is the primary purpose of your travel. So if you, let's say you live in California and you travel to Las Vegas for a reseller conference, if that's the primary purpose of your visit, then you can deduct those flights or that travel from California to Vegas. And if you decide to extend your trip a couple days for personal reasons, for entertainment, then those few days, the local travel and that lodging on those extra days is not going to be deductible, but everything else should be. But if we look at the reverse, if you go to Vegas for entertainment purposes, but you take one day to go hit up some thrift stores or go sourcing somewhere, the only thing that's going to be deductible are the expenses incurred on that extra day. So
Mhm.
one night of lodging, maybe those meals and those travel expenses. So it just depends what your main
Mhm.
focus is.
Yeah, can't just go party. And what would you do is just make note of that in like a spreadsheet, or like if you have a separate business account, I guess you could just say, well, this is for business.
Yep. Whatever your bookkeeping system is, just make sure you record those expenses as business, and you'll have
Yeah.
them.
I feel like for YouTubers, especially, maybe you're a YouTuber watching, that's, you could, because it's work, right? Like it's a business. So, like, if you're filming, that's work, right? Like, what is the benefits of being a YouTuber and taking and, using that advantage?
Yeah, I mean, you're right for sure. Again, it can get a little bit gray.
Exactly.
So yeah, if in reality you're going to party somewhere and you're like, oh, let me bust out the camera for 5 minutes so I can write off this whole trip,
That's what I
that's
was wondering.
probably, yeah. So it is kind of an art. Um,
Interesting.
there's no, yeah, it's not black and white. And if it ever came down to it, if the IRS was like, okay, prove it, you could make your case, and they might be
Right.
like, okay.
Yeah, I've always wondered that. Wild time, wild time. Well, very good, very good. I love that. Let's walk into like a little bit more about like how people, could work with you and like maybe some of the benefits as like why should I hire a CPA if I've never hired one before?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not someone who will say that everybody has to or should get a CPA or a tax preparer.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, there are some bad ones out there too, probably, but every significant life event or thing you add into your life often has a tax implication that's going to create an added layer of complexity on your tax return. So, like if you get married, if you have kids, if
Hmm.
somebody uh, dies, or you get divorced, or if you start a business, if you buy a rental property, if you have investments, all those things make your tax situation more and more complex, and it just increases the likelihood that something's going to fall through the cracks, that you're either going to miss something that was required, or just miss something that could have reduced your taxes even more, or just sometimes there's combinations of things that a tax professional might look at those and they could say, oh, we could put those together and you have this really great opportunity for tax savings, and just all this stuff
Hmm.
that you're not aware of. That all increases as your tax situation complexity increases. So the more of those things you have, the more likely it is that a tax professional will benefit you. So, and if you have just a reselling business, if you're a simple sole proprietorship, that means that you have self-employment activity, and that can introduce enough complexity on its own.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many little things that you can do just within the business to save money. I mean, just the question of, well, should I use the mileage method or the actual expenses method for my car?
Hmm.
Should I use the simplified method for the home office deduction or the regular method for the home office deduction? Just like every one of those little decisions can, be worth thousands of dollars potentially.
Your taxes that you pay over a lifetime are the biggest expense you will pay in your life, ladies and gentlemen. So it's good to figure it out now before you go 20 years and go, man, I could have made an extra $250,000 doing this or that you could have invested back into your business. That's how I see it. I'm all about pain now or pain later. I'd rather take the pain of paying the extra 500 to have it done by a pro than to wait. Oh, I could have saved that over a year, over a year, over a year, especially if you're a small business owner. All these things change too. So it's good to pay someone. That's how I see it. I know it's not for everyone, but um, you see a lot of the times, and we did this as well, but maybe you can explain a bit better. When it comes to the end of the year, when we're running our business, why would someone want to make a big purchase towards their business like at the end of the year versus maybe making that purchase next year?
Yeah, if it just depends. And I mean, the main thing I'll say here is you don't want to go spend money at the end of the year just for the purpose of getting a deduction.
Hmm.
Because yeah, it'll save you on taxes, but you'll have less money in your pocket than you otherwise would have. But if it's something that you're going to buy anyway for your business and you're just pulling that expense forward so you can benefit from it in the current year, then that's going to help you in the current year.
Yeah.
Um, but over the long term, it may or may not help. Sometimes there are reasons to get your income below a certain threshold in the current year, and
Mm-hmm.
that'll benefit you for some reason because you'll qualify for something else,
Yeah.
um, or maybe you don't get paid till next month or whatever. But yeah, for sure, if there are expenses that you're going to incur in your business eventually, and you just want to get the benefit for them now, then I'm all for making those purchases in December before the new year comes, so you can have that tax benefit.
Mm-hmm. Yep. A common thing, like if I'm at a thrift store, it seems to me just what I notice, and you can explain why this happens. But like, I'll go to the thrift store and just November, December, and you'll see a lot of stuff that's like new with tags, from TJ Maxx or other retailers. Are they like unloading a large amount of clothes to take advantage of some kind of tax benefit or write off? Because I seem to see a lot more new stuff in thrift stores that time of year.
That's a good question. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on that one, but I
What are
suppose there could
businesses
be
doing?
a motivation behind that.
There has to be something, or maybe it's just old season stuff that they're just getting rid of. I don't know. I didn't know if that
Right.
had anything to do with taxes.
Yeah.
Can you go into some, maybe, since you have a background in finance and we're all trying to save money, make money, be efficient with our finances? Can you, maybe from your own personal experience, provide any tip to, maybe just be better money manager, or just better, maybe some habits that, from a simple habit like me is like, I try to check my bank account every day because I want to know what's going in, what's going out. And that's a really simple, probably dumb thing to think about, but I know what's coming in, what's going out. And just by knowing that, I know how to spend my money, where the money's going. But maybe you have some hacks or secrets that can be beneficial to people.
Yeah, just something basic. I mean, I think a lot of resellers, small business owners, they get the message that they should be doing better bookkeeping in their businesses. And I think a lot of them and a lot of us are getting better at that. But then it doesn't do you a whole lot of good if you've got perfect books in your business, but then on your personal finances, you're not keeping track of any of that stuff, or you're not budgeting on the personal side. Because my books for my business, like, they're reconciled, they're perfect, but sometimes I neglect the personal budget. And just like a year or two ago, I got more serious about getting back in there and keeping track of things with the software. And it's like, oh man, I got to get this spending back under control. We're spending how much,
Right.
on the kids last month, and
Right.
just being aware of your spending is going to help you drive better habits, better behavior.
Yeah. Is there a, I used to use, I think it got shut down. I used to use Mint. Mint, it's like a TurboTax affiliation. I think they're no longer available, but is there one that you use or one that you could suggest? Just something to simply keep track better.
Yeah, I used Mint probably for 15 years. So when they shut it down, I did a little bit of research, and I ended
Oh,
up going with one called Monarch.
yeah. Okay.
And I love it. So it's not free, but it's good enough where I'm happy to pay the annual fee. It's like $50 a year or something. But yeah, it's really helpful to have something.
Yes, and this is why a lot of businesses move to subscription models. Why? Because many people forget that they have a subscription to something that keeps coming out of their bank. For me, it was like Dropbox, and we had a NBC paid subscription, and 2 years can go by. That could be $250. That's why I would suggest people, have some type of thing, because you'll see it. You'll be like, it's going here, it's going there. So yeah, and I mean, from a business point of view, it's genius, subscription, everything. But at the same time, when you're, on the other end, you need to be aware of what's going out of your bank. Uh, it always goes back to that simple thing, is just don't spend more than you make. It's not it's kind of like a lost art here in America, but um, yeah, I love that. I love it. So, what are you looking to accomplish this year in your business? Is it, you're scaling? Where do you see like vision with your business? Is this something, 10 years, 20 years? What does it look like? I know it's a deep question, but what is maybe some plans for this year and beyond?
That is a deep question. I mean, for this year, it's basically just have a successful tax season, try and get through it
Hmm.
as smoothly as possible, and providing the best service I can, helping people save money and all that stuff. Um, but as far as long term, I think I'm still trying to figure that out.
Hmm.
How much more do I want to try and scale? Honestly, like, it doesn't appeal to me that much. I like being a little bit smaller. The bigger you get, the more you have to delegate, and the more you lose control of quality and all that stuff. So for now, I'm just kind of, as far as my tax business, just I'm not trying to grow super rapidly. I mean, I do have space for new clients if people need help and stuff, but I'm trying to put out more like education and stuff on YouTube.
Mhm.
I have my course for beginners. Basically, it's called Reseller Tax Academy. Just growing those areas, but yeah, I got some thinking to do on that.
And who's that for? Is that a person that wants to become a CPA or wants to learn to do their taxes themselves?
So it's specifically for resellers, and it's not necessarily to teach you how to do your taxes. I mean, you already
Mm,
have programs like TurboTax that
yeah.
give you interview type questions and walk you through it. It's more like that basic education piece that I was talking about, so that when TurboTax asks you all these questions, I mean, I know for a fact it asks you the first question, and the person just starts sweating because they're like, "Oh, I don't know. Like, what if I put yes? What if I put no?"
There you go. Do you wanna upgrade every 5 seconds?
Oh,
Do you
right,
wanna
right, right.
upgrade? Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. The more education, the better. So is that kinda your vision for your YouTube channel? Because 'Cause you've grown a good bit. I think I remember coming across when I first got started 4 years ago, 3 years ago, I mean, you now have over 30,000 subscribers. So what is the just to continue to do more educational, maybe finance, tax, benefits, things like that for your YouTube?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I suppose that makes me a content creator. I work with a lot of content creators, so I've thought of tailoring it more toward content creators as well.
Mhm.
Um, because there's a ton of overlap between the stuff I talk about. Just since I focus on resellers, that just means I talk more about inventory and cost of goods sold and
Yeah.
stuff that's common to them. But there is a lot
Mhm.
of overlap with other industries. So
Niches, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. Okay, well, let's see. What documentation should resellers prioritize keeping throughout the year? So we kind of went over this, but is it really like as important to make sure? Because I've talked to people where they're like, I didn't even know I was supposed to keep track of that. What's like the one
Mhm.
thing, do they really need to keep every receipt or is it something simple like put it in the spreadsheet? What do I do?
Yeah, put it in the spreadsheet and forget about it. If you have a receipt for it, that's great. I mean, throw that in
Yeah.
your file or scan it.
Yeah.
And that's the better option. Like digitize it somehow, and
Mm.
you'll probably never have to look at it again. But if you ever did, then you have it.
I've seen people like the Amazon sellers, if you do retail arbitrage, they just put it through those scanners and it just uploads into like a Google Drive. Easy,
Yep. Yep.
simple. Um, so there's a big thing, and we just started doing this last year, but what's the benefits of paying yearly taxes versus quarterly taxes? Should we do quarterly taxes or yearly taxes? What is maybe the benefits or the difference?
Yeah. So some people are required to pay quarterly. It
Hmm.
just depends on your tax liability at the end of the year. Because when you are a W-2 employee, we all know that we're seeing those taxes come out of our paycheck every pay period,
Yep.
because your employer is remitting those to the government on your behalf.
Yeah.
But when you become self-employed, or you have, yeah, a reselling business or something you do on the side, those earnings, nobody's necessarily paying taxes on those throughout the year. So if you're going to owe over a certain amount at the end of the year, then the IRS says, okay, well, you're supposed to pay those quarterly. And yeah, I have a couple YouTube videos on that. I don't know if you want the specifics, but
Yeah. Is there a fee? Like if we don't, is it like a certain threshold that we need to be making to take advantage of maybe paying quarterly, or is it just good to just do it quarterly just to have it done?
it could be like personal preference. But like if you're going to owe over $1,000 at the end of the year, then the IRS typically wants you to pay those quarterly.
Hmm.
And there is an exception to that, and that is if you've already paid in an amount equal to what your prior year tax liability was, then you don't have to make any more estimated payments. If you owe, you'll still have to pay it at the end of the year. It just means that you won't owe any penalties for being late.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, there's
Gotcha.
a bunch of rules around it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, don't circumvent the rules because it won't be fun. They love I mean, they love taking advantage of the fees. You're gonna get paid, you're going to pay what you owe, and then plus on top of that, there's like an interest, right? Because we pay when last year we made payments on that. So there is a fee that goes into it, but it also helps at the same time reinvest back into the business. So um, right on. Well, if people want to work with you and get a hold of you, I'll put all the links to Mark's stuff down below. You said you're accepting new clients. What can you help them do? Why would I want to hire Mark?
Yeah, I mean, if you are not really looking forward to preparing your own taxes, that's something I could definitely help with. Whether you are a sole proprietor or whether you have an S corp or something else. So I do a ton of consulting around taxes, tax preparation. I do bookkeeping for a handful of clients as well. So yeah, if those are
Mm,
things that you need help with, then feel free to reach out. So my website is notyourdadscpa.com. So you can send me a message through there or not your dad CPA on YouTube or Instagram.
okay. And not just for resellers, for anybody. Um,
Mhm.
okay, that's good. That's good. Well, I love it. I love it. I'm gonna put all the links down below. Appreciate your time. That was beautiful. I learned a lot. I learn a lot every year. But hey, nothing more important than learning to take advantage of some tax savings, tax benefits. Go check out his channel too, because it has a lot of good information for people that are just getting into reselling, what I should be doing. Appreciate you, Mark. Have a blessed day, everybody. We'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.